Welcome to my channel. This is Rhonda of Fruitful Life Studio, and here are my top 12 tips for visible mending. I wanted to show you a few of the things that I'm working on. Today I'm shipping off this tunic, so I thought I would show it to you before I put it in the box and send it off. It features my original art that I have professionally printed into an art panel. I used this art panel as a patch and added slow stitching visible mending, which I will show you several tips in this video how you too as a beginner can be successful with slow stitching. Here I have a dress that is beautiful gauze cotton in a bright color. It really went well with one of my new fabric art panels. This is a piece of art that I finished up with my Muse Frida Kahlo, and I am stitching it to this dress. Now, I didn't want to just have the panel by itself. I'm building a little bit of a fabric collage. So first, I decided I would look for some coordinating fabrics. This is a piece of fabric I've had for a couple decades now, maybe. I attached it with my my sewing machine, my Juki sewing machine, my travel machine. And then this one is just a basic zigzag. Here is from a cutout piece of a collar that I recently got, and I just zigzagged this. I framed out the top and the bottom of the piece of art or the art panel, and now I'm doing a visible mending along the sides just to add some texture and color. So you could do this completely without a machine. I choose to do 2 rows of a straight stitch around my panel first when I'm doing this look, and then that also gives me a guide for my visible mending stitches. If you don't have a sewing machine, no worries, you can do the same thing. This is really going to secure the whip stitch, or the slip stitch is really going to secure your fabric panel down. So you can start out by gluing your fabric panel on the back side with a glue stick. Get all the edges down, make sure it's flat. If you have an iron, you can iron it. Now I've got my embroidery needle and my embroidery thread. I am going to double this. This is pearl cotton in a variegated pattern. I'm going to double it, and when I match it up, I like to have contrasting colors together. So I'm not going to match up my thread and have light colors together. I want that variation. I want that to come out, even though it will change as you stitch. So I'm going to cut it here. Now, for most people, the hardest part about this is threading the needle. So I like to bite it with my front teeth, get it a little moist, and I see there's a little piece of thread. You want all the edges to be blunt with nothing loose, no partial threads. Okay, now I bit it. Now I'm squeezing it together between my finger and thumb, and I am going to bring the eye of the needle to, and I'm bracing myself like this. I'm bringing the eye of the needle to the thread. I used to very much struggle with this when I started, but just, you know, some people do the waxing of the thread. Some people say don't ever moisten it, but this is what works for me. Now I'm evening up. You can do this a single thread, but I am going to double it. I'm going to make a knot. However you like to make your knots, do that. So I've got my knot. Just going to trim it a little bit. I'm not worried about the end. Now, I'm just going to try to calm down the thread by just running it through. You can do this really ideally before you knot it as well, so it kind of gets out all the twisties. And now you can see I've already started. I've run out of thread. I've knotted it off. Now I'm going to start again. So I am working with parallel lines on the front, but it actually makes kind of a slant stitch on the back because you're moving over a bit for each stitch. So I'm going to pull that through. Now I have this hand underneath. Now I need to figure out where I'm coming out next. So I want this line to be parallel with the fabric panel. So I'm going to push it in, and I'm going to come out just a little bit to the top of that stitch. And if you pull too tight, you want to get that loosened up, so pull it a little bit so it's not tight. Now I can hold this back here just so I see where I'm going. Again, I'm going parallel, coming up. Now you can go all the way off the edge, but I kind of like the look of just having that little bit of edge peeking through. You do it however you like. Again, I'm pulling it so it's not puckered. A little bit of pucker I think looks good. I'm going parallel, then coming up a little bit next door. I want a little bit of a stitch to a little space between the stitches. Lightly pull, and you'll see sometimes they're close, sometimes they're far apart. That's what I love about visible mending. Some embroiders are very professional and they make sure everything is evenly spaced. You could do that, and you could measure it out and mark your stitches with like an erasable pen or an iron away marker that quilters use. But I like the look of just really organic stitches. That one, see, went off the edge and it causes a little bit more pucker, but that's okay. I'm going to keep going parallel, and then at a little bit of an angle coming out so that there's space between my stitches. If your thread starts to curl and get knotted, sometimes you might have to like pull out a little bit of knot by pulling back. I feel like the pearl cotton gets a lot less tangles than some of the less expensive embroidery threads for me. Just play around with the threads you already have. You can even use those beautiful cotton crocheted the big rolls. Now you see here I have about 3 inches of thread. You don't want to go any farther, because if you look at your needle, the length of your needle, you need room to tie this off, to knot this off, and start a new thread. So I am going to go parallel to finish that stitch, and then I'll come up through the back, and now I'm going to make a little slip knot. You see I have enough to make a little loop there. I'm pushing my needle through the loop and pulling to make my slip knot. I'm going to make one more, and I'm going to make sure it's not, the needle isn't showing from the other side, because I don't want an extra stitch in there. I'm going to push the needle through that loop before I pull it. So that's 2 slip knots. I'm going to make sure it's tight. Now I'm just going to bury the end, making sure it's not coming through the front side, burying the end, pulling it through. I still have enough. See, I'm getting really close. Now I get my scissors and I can just trim that right there. And you see the little knot, but the end is buried. Now I can keep going, thread a new piece of thread and go all the way up to the finish, and then knot it again. Now I'm ready to go. I'm going to come up here where I want my first stitch to start. I'm going to calm down this thread because it seems to be twisting around, and a little bit of oil, natural oils from your skin, will apply and just calm down that thread from twisting as much. Okay, Now I can keep continuing my visible mending path. Another place I added some slip stitching or whip stitching was around this vintage piece of embroidered, it looks like a linen. It had some little holes in it. So I whip stitch around this hole and this hole, and it looks, this one, but it looks like I need to do a little bit more work here. So again, I'm using that same stitch that I did on my fabric panel to visibly mend the holes in this vintage lace or trim. Here's what I'm using to visibly mend these little holes in the vintage trim. This is a crochet and knitting cotton. It's 100% cotton. I got it, a whole bag of these at a yard sale one time. Now to do the test, you don't want to buy threads to use with your handwork or your machine work unless you test them out. So I always kind of do the pull test. If you tug, this is not going to easily break. So if you give it some tugs and it's not gonna break, you know it's gonna hold up to your sewing. Because this is very delicate fabric, I'm just using a single thread this time. I'm not doubling it, so it's got that tail right there. I'm gonna give it about, let me see, I'm gonna measure it right now. So maybe about 20 inches is all you want to keep things from tangling up. I'm gonna calm it down. I'm gonna knot the end, however you want to knot it. I'm gonna roll it, pull the end to tighten up that knot. Okay. Now I'm gonna come through the underside and come out right where that hole is occurring. And now I'm just gonna go around the circle very loosely and give it some whip stitching so that it doesn't come apart, but it also is really a fun look, the visible mending look. If you were inspired by this video to upcycle or refashion your own clothing, check out some of my videos. Check out my website, Fruitful Life Studio, where you will see all kinds of fabric panels that make it easy to build your own fabric collage.